A day after US Secretary of State John Kerry described climate change as perhaps the world's most fearsome weapon of mass destruction, the Abbott government has today taken another step towards overhauling the climate policies left over from Labour's years in power. The government has announced a major review of the impact of clean energy on retail power prices. It'll be headed by a self-confessed global warming sceptic, businessman Dick Warburton. And it's widely expected to result in a decision to wind back the current renewable energy target, which aims to ensure that 20% of Australia's power comes from renewable sources like wind and solar by the year 2020. Industry groups are lobbying for the target to be abolished or cut. Among them is the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Its chief economist, Burchell Wilson, joined me earlier from Canberra. Burchell Wilson, thank you very much for joining the programme.
You're welcome.
There was a substantial review of the renewable energy target in 2012. Why do we need another review so soon after?
Well, the review is scheduled by legislation to take place in 2014, so obviously it has a parliamentary mandate to take place. But the other thing about the scheme is there needs to be more clarity around the costs it's imposing on consumers, the costs it's imposing on industry, and the sort of inefficiencies it's giving rise to in the energy sector.
What about those people who are investing in the renewable sector? Are they not part of the Chamber of Commerce as well?
Look, the problem with the renewable energy target is it's imposing a cost of $1.6 billion across the economy. It amounts to about 5% of household energy costs now, and that's just going to mushroom over time as the scheme continues to be rolled out.
Let's just talk about the domestic cost for a minute, because the Climate Change Authority did look at the consequences of scrapping the target if that were to happen as a result of the review, and they found that the effect on domestic energy prices would be negligible. Why do you say it's such an important factor in this decision to review the target then?
Look, you've had a range of regulatory authorities around the country come out in recent months and tell us that the cost of the RET to average households is around $102 per annum, which is about 5% of their electricity bill.
And how much of that is covered by government compensation?
None of it. It's a consumer subsidy. Taxpayers don't foot the bill, energy users do. That just makes it more insidious. It's not on the budget anywhere. It's a cost to consumers that they don't really know that they're wearing.
Is $100 a year a good enough reason to consider scrapping the renewable energy target if that is indeed one of the factors at play here?
Look, the problem with the renewable energy target is it's a very inefficient way of abating carbon. The Productivity Commission has told us this. It's costing up to $525 per tonne to abate carbon under the renewable energy target. There are low-cost alternatives available, and effectively we're undermining our emissions reduction effort by persisting with the renewable energy target.
Would you like to see it scrapped?
We need to see it wound back in terms of its ambition, and gradually phased out would be desirable from the perspective of industry and energy users.
Phased out over what period? What are you actually calling for here?
Look, this has to be examined as part of the review. There needs to be some provision made for the sunk investment under the scheme, but over time we should be winding this back, allowing the sunk investment to naturally decay and fall away, and allow the renewable sector to compete on a level footing with baseload generators and efficient sources of energy.
And is that something that you can realistically expect, were you to wind back the renewable energy target in the short term as you propose?
Look, if people want to consume renewable energy, there are schemes available for them to opt in on a voluntary basis. But mandating this cost on consumers without providing any sort of level of clarity around the costs they're imposing is bad policy, and it's bad for energy users.
Let's just have a look at the makeup of the panel who are going to consider this review. Dick Warburton is a self-avowed sceptic. His views on the subject are well known. Is he an appropriate person to be leading this review?
Absolutely. Dick led the charge against Australia having the highest carbon tax in the world, you'll realise that Australians per capita pay $380 per head for under the carbon tax, whereas Europeans under the ETS, they're paying about $1.50. So there is no comparison between what we're doing domestically and the efforts that are taking place abroad. We are an outlier. Just
stay with the makeup of the panel for the moment. We've also got Brian Fisher, who has a long history of being opposed to pricing mechanisms in this area. It does sound as though the outcome of the review is to some extent preordained.
Brian Fisher is a first-rate economist, one of the best in the country. If he, I don't think he has any predetermined views on the matter, but he will approach this like an economist, and
But a long history of opposition to pricing mechanisms for tackling climate change.
Well, I don't know if that's true, but what he will tell you is the renewable energy target is high cost, it's inefficient as a means of abating carbon, and if that's your primary objective with respect to the RET, then we should scrap it altogether.
What do you expect the outcome of the review to be?
Look, we're hopeful that at least the scale of the ambition for the renewable energy target will be scaled back, but also hopeful that there'll be some provision made for phasing the thing out over time and putting the renewables sector on a competitive footing with other forms of generation.
It's not going to be on an even footing, though, because if you remove the mandated target, that's going to harm investor confidence in the renewable sector, isn't it?
Look, the renewable energy target is it's corporate welfare on a massive scale directed towards the renewable sector. I don't know why anyone would have any level of sympathy for businesses that they don't employ many people, that they don't export anything, and they've surreptitiously imposed these massive costs on energy consumers for the sake of lining their own profits.
Do you have any sympathy for investors in the renewable energy sector in Australia tonight?
Well, they've run quite a disingenuous campaign in recent years. They've hidden the cost of the RET, and they're finally experiencing a level of accountability. I think that's entirely appropriate, and it's strong leadership from the Prime Minister, the Industry Minister and the Environment Minister in putting the RET on the table and having an honest examination of the issue.
Thank you very much indeed, Burchell Wilson, for joining us. We'll see how the review pans out.
Thanks very much.